Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of Inspired Conversations with Coaches. I'm your host, Scott Campbell. Today's show is all about aligning values with actions. My guest is Mark Terrell. Mark helps you and everyone you lead to be a happier and more productive at work. You can find more about Mark at the Reluctant Leader Academy. That's his website. It's a fantastic conversation around values and what they mean from business and in personal aspect. And let's just get straight to the show. Hey, so hi, Mark.
Hi, Scott.
Hi, thanks for coming on. Inspired.
Thank you for the invite. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's good. And we're going to be talking about aligning values with actions.
Mhm.
Topic you picked, but looking doing the bit of research, I think it's very. I can see why you picked it, and I suppose the
Mhm.
when I start, we'll get quite sort of straight into it. I suppose a little bit. I want to start with the about values really, because personal and business values, should they be different? Are they different? Should they be what's kind of your thought on that before we start? Because I think when we people can read this two ways, they might be attracted to this from a business values,
Mhm.
also personal values, and it'd be interesting your thoughts around the
Well, I think you can have different values in business as opposed to your private life, and I think sometimes you do have to do that, particularly if money isn't something that really is a high value of yours. So if you go into business, and particularly coaches, let's face it, a lot of coaches wouldn't go into set up a coaching business because they want to make lots of money.
Mm.
But if that's not a value for them, it might be a problem to them, or it might be an Achilles heel if they're not focused enough on generating enough income and money. And so in business, you've got to have some sort of value around money, don't you? Otherwise, you pay no attention to it. And so because you don't pay any attention to it, nothing comes your way. You don't make the sale. And so that might not be an underlying value of yours on day to day, but when you're in business, then I suggest that you have to have a healthy, um, sort of values driven
yeah,
idea around money to make sure it's not being neglected.
yeah. I think you definitely need a healthy relationship with money in that
Mm.
sense. As you are, I think if your coaches come into it thinking, well, I'll make the impact and I'll get paid loads, but in it, and then realize got to put some focus on it. And
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So if you talk and where do you work kind of with the bit that attracts you aligning values with actions? Was it more from the business perspective for you?
Well, it's something that I work a lot with, essentially. Values is key in that I talk a lot about motivation in particular with regards to maintaining energy, because essentially that's what motivation is. It's where our energies lie. And if you think about the connection to values, values are the things that we value. And
Yeah.
so they're the things that are important to us. So if they're important to us, then we need to make sure they're being fulfilled in our life and in our business. So, and if we think about the way that values are aligned with motivation, motivation, if you split the word down, is actually motive and action. Motive being the reason we do something,
Mm.
and sorry, motive being the reason, and the action being the thing that we do because of it. And so, values are very much linked to the things we do and the things the things we buy and all this. So the important thing I feel with regards to values is that they're very much linked to motivation, and that's what I do a lot. I spend a lot of time with my client, helping them understand what motivates them. And motivation is essentially the reason we do something. So the motive being the reason, the action being the thing we do because of it. And
Mm.
so if you think about values being the things that we value, then there's a very much a correlation with regards to the things that we value and the things that we do and the choices that we make.
Mm. Makes sense.
Mhm.
Like that with the motivation, the two things that I've never thought of that like that before. So that's quite
Well,
insightful.
sometimes people get confused between motivation and inspiration, and that's the way I always explain it. Inspiration, you can be inspired by anyone. So when we go and listen to a motivational speaker, ironically, in most cases they're telling us a story of adversity from overcoming some adversity, and so that inspires us to say, well, if they can do it, we can do it. So
Yeah.
I call that inspiration, whereas motivation comes from within. It's something that's important to us. And because of we have a reason to do something, then we take action. And obviously the opposite is true as well. If there's no motive, then we tend not to take the action.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting actually, because I've
Mm,
always struggled with that motivation thing. Is always kind of sort of I suppose I got around it myself with the commitment to the consistency is kind of
mm.
so with that in mind with the values then, so how crucial are they in terms of shaping what our actions are and our decisions that we make?
Well, they're fundamental into the things that we do, and the reasons we do them. So just to give you an idea of a value that I've got at the moment around, particularly around food. So I've got a value that I want to buy as higher quality food as I can, and that means buying organic and avoiding ultra processed. So that's a clear value. When I go, I do all the food shopping in our house, and nobody else wants to do it, so I do it. And so when I go shopping, whether it's online or whether it's in store, my number one criteria, because it's a value of mine, is to buy organic whenever I can. I think it's a reasonable price, and there's not, sometimes it's like quadruple the price, but when it's only maybe half, double the price, then maybe I think, well, actually, that's worth buying. And also avoiding ultra processed foods, because I know that it's good for my health. So I have a value around good food because I know that's good for my health. And so it makes really clear with regards to the actions I take and the things I buy. So when you've got that, it makes things simpler. It's a bit like marketing. When you're clear about who you're talking to, then it's a lot easier. And the mistake most people make is I can help everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I suppose that accounts for the decisions then, because when you're making a decision about something, that if you're aligned to your values, it's incredibly powerful in that sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just something about because we know from your research about the energy side that you work with our clients and like that.
Yeah.
Um, so how does the philosophy of sort of tying into aligning one's values to their daily actions from an energy perspective? So when you're sort of managing, especially for people managing energy that are
Mhm.
over time for the high performance,
So
how does
what you'll tend to find, if you're doing a lot of things that are against your values, that would tend to sap your energy. And the vice versa is if you're doing something that really is in line with something that actually is important to you, that tends to give you energy. And so, and I talk a lot with my clients around managing more about managing energy than time. A lot of people think about, how can I manage my time better and get me be more productive? But the problem with time is there's only a limited amount of it. You can't make more of it. You could be more efficient with the time, but why not actually concentrate on energy? Because you can generate more of it. Because if you're in a higher energy state, then you become automatically more productive. You do things because you want to do them. And
yeah,
so that in the workplace, a lot of people fall into the trap of doing things that they're good at, but it's not attached to their value. So they do it, but there's no meaning in it. And so ultimately that's sapping their energy. And that's when they get disillusioned and disengaged with what they're doing because they don't know why they're doing it. And
yeah,
the important thing is, if you know why you do something, then it drives that action and it's clearer and you'll do more of it because you know it makes you feel good.
so would that be that bit where people already sort of in the flow and in the zone? It's because it's
Mhm.
aligned to their values and it just feels effortless, if you like. And
Absolutely. That
yeah,
is exactly it. When you're in that flow, when you feel that it's everything sort of effortless, everything seems to be just going in the right direction and flowing. It's that place where we all are in our ultimate place where we're doing things. I would suggest we're doing things that we're good at
yeah,
and that we want to do them. So it's the combination of the skills and the will. And when you've got those two things going on at the same time, that's when we're at our most productive and performance at its highest because both those factors are being fulfilled.
Mhm. And so where we talked about stuff about that between that personal and business values difference,
Mhm.
is that because I suppose a lot of people in business will look at their business values, even like coaches, will look at their what here's my values, my mission, vision statement, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I don't know how many people have looked at. Maybe you can tell me this. What it is whether how many people look at their personal values as much,
Mhm.
and then if they're not aware of their values, is that they how much energy sapping stuff becomes like it affects so one if it's in their personal life,
Yeah.
does that start affecting then their energy from their in their business side?
Um, well, the way I look at it is that as long as you're getting enough of your values fulfilled, then that's maintaining and hopefully improving your energy. And if you're in that state, you can do things that sap your energy, but it's about matter of balancing those things out. So let's just give you another example. So when people are promoted to a position of leadership,
Yeah,
so they suddenly become responsible for others. Now, one of their values may not be that they want to be responsible for others. But obviously, it's a key part of the job, isn't it?
yeah,
And so, what you've got to do is see it as something that's connected to what you do value.
yeah,
So, for instance, okay, I'm not, a value isn't of being in charge isn't important to me.
mm,
But what is important to me is making a difference. So being in charge, does that allow me to make more of a difference? In most cases, yes. So what you need to think about, it's not about being in charge, it's about making more of a difference because you have the authority and the position to make more of a difference. Because a lot of people, are driven to make a difference. And when they have responsibility, that's the place where they find the most satisfaction with regards to making that difference. But they have to take on the responsibility first.
yeah. That's interesting because a lot of people might feel that, oh, I don't like that part, so it's draining. But as you say, if you can associate to one of your values, then driving one of your values, the
Yeah,
outlook and of it, and I
yeah,
suppose how they look at it and how they treat it, and it changes completely.
yeah. So let's go back to coaches and charging for their services again.
Mm.
So if they're not, their values are quite low with regards to money, so they haven't got a strong desire to be wealthy, that might be something that's a problem to them. But what we need to do is think about, well, if you don't sell anything and generate income, is that going to allow you to make the difference that you want to make? And obviously, it's not going to allow that to happen. So making a sale and being successful at selling is essential to allow them to make a difference because that's what most coaches are in it for because they want to make a difference and do something that's meaningful and purposeful um, to change something. But you can't make that change happen unless you are getting enough clients on board. And to do that, you've got to be successful in selling your transformation. Essentially, that's what coaches do, sell us some sort of transformation, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. That's why I say you're not selling a service, you're selling a transformation and the person. It's a great
Mm.
way to look at it because then you can um, not have that negative approach to something then that actually experience is a great approach. How
Yeah.
many um, how many values is not enough and how many is too many?
Well, it's a good question. Um, well, one of the things that I do is I help my clients identify what motivates them. And so once they know what motivates them, then they can attach their own personal values to what that means to them. So for instance, if they identify that, say, freedom is a motivator for them. So when we say freedom, it's about making their own choices, doing things their own way, those sort of things.
Yeah,
They can then, from that, get their own personal values around why freedom is important to them. And so once you've done that, so I wouldn't say it's important about the amount, but it's about connecting them to the overall reason why that value is important to them so that they actually can then start taking action.
yeah,
And then another exercise I get my clients to do is to do a stop-start review with regards to, the values and motivations they have to make sure that the things they're doing on a day-to-day are in line with those motivations. Um, and once you know why you're doing those things, then it's easier to understand why you're doing them, and you're more likely to do them.
Mm, makes sense. And how do the if someone if someone's where they kind of let's say they started working with you and they've gone through their values and they realize that there's a lot of stuff they're doing which is not aligned to their values.
Yeah.
Um, and what's the sort of kind of the process someone realizes that then? So with their like I get it with the obviously of taking the action of I need to lead people because that helps me get it. If there's something that's really not aligned to them
Yeah.
values, what's the sort of process that they can go through that?
Well, I think the best way to describe what some feedback I got from a client once. So she came to me, I met her networking, and she said, "Oh, I really need to speak to you because my motivation's quite low at the moment. I don't quite understand why." And she said, and the first thing she told me was that she had started looking for jobs. She was running a business, and on the face of it, our business seemed like it was successful. It was turning over quite a lot, and all those sort of things are the tick boxes that you would think meant success. Um, on the face of it looked good, but so what? The first thing I get them to do is do this diagnostic I use to identify their motivations. And what it identified was, firstly, her number one motivator was freedom.
Right.
And so from that, she realized that looking for a job, there isn't many jobs on that you can get that give you freedom. So she realized that's the worst thing she could be doing,
Yeah.
and it was a reaction to the way she was feeling about her business.
Yeah.
And so I think values are about how we feel about things,
Yeah.
and values are very personal, and we can change them if we want to, but they are very much ingrained in us, and sometimes we don't quite understand why they're important, and sometimes the deeper work you do in a coaching session sort of brings them all out. But what we also found out from our motivational map was that she was driven for friendship. So one of the values was that she wanted to be connected to uh, her clients.
Yeah.
And she suddenly realized that a lot of her clients, she was had no connection with whatsoever. They were just people that she did work for. And she
Mm.
realized that's the mistake that she'd made. She'd taken on lots of clients doing things that she didn't really want to do with people which we didn't particularly, let's say, value.
Yeah.
Um, and so after that realization was that she decided, well, she's got to make her business work because it's going to give her ultimately freedom, but she needs to be more wary about the type of clients she works with.
Yeah.
So she had a strategy around sort of moving on those clients that she didn't particularly like working with. And so she basically put her prices up and they gradually sort of went. And then, funnily enough, putting her prices up attracted the types of clients she wanted. Um, and now, one of our criteria with our clients is regards to, well, if I can't see myself going out on a sort of night out with these people, then they're probably not going to be my ideal clients. And so she tends to turn that sort of work down now. So that's how this can be really powerful in that if you connect to the values that you have, sometimes, things you didn't realize were so important, understanding that first and then realizing that's making me feel in a particular way about my business, which isn't helpful. So I need to change something.
Yeah.
So
It's
there's an
interesting. I
example.
think a lot of coaches watch it because it's having that, if you like, relational karma. It's just not a transactional one, it's and
Mhm.
it's interesting with her then. So she was some of her actions was it was very transactional with her clients, which was against her values that she didn't, if you like, not aligned to her values in that sense, where
Mhm.
they're working. But then applying for jobs together also didn't align with her values of wanting
No.
freedom. Yeah,
So, well, she was just trying to get
yeah,
away from the feeling that she was having, thinking, well,
yeah,
maybe a job will take away this feeling. But as we very quickly
yeah,
realized that a job was not going to make her feel any better, it would probably make her feel worse in the long run. So she needed to be, you know, ultra focused on the type of client that she wanted to work with.
mm, that's pretty powerful. And so
Mm.
what are the potential sort of other consequences of living out of an alignment with your values?
Um, well, you can make some poor decisions, I think. I think you tend to make poor decisions. Um, and if we talk about consciousness as a concept, a lot of us, I think when you talk about coaches, I think we tend to be more conscious because we've done work on ourselves and we're conscious of things, more things than with regards to personal development and things. But when we think about if we're not in touch with our values, then we're unconsciously doing things.
Mm.
Some things that's fine, but when we are deciding on, business decisions or our careers and all those sort of things, we need to be more conscious around what's right for us because we tend to, look for advice from other people. So I'm a member of this alert service and I get alerted to people that want executive coaching and all this sort of stuff.
No.
And I'm absolutely astounded by the amount of people that just say, oh, it's just a one-off. I think, well, what good is a one-off thing to anybody? It was just completely unrealistic. If you want something to change in your life, then it's a process that you've got to work through. And what those sort of people are looking for is someone just to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Well, that just can't happen. It just doesn't work like that. You've got to go into yourself and understand yourself. And that's why in my book I talk about a seven-step process. And the number one, the first step in that process is put the mirror up. And that's all about self-awareness. Understand yourself. What drives you? What's your behavioral styles? What's your character strengths that are, and which ones are you using a lot and which ones aren't you using enough of? Start from that point. Then you're in a much more conscious state and you're making conscious decisions because, oh, yes, I'm doing this because of this, that, and the other. It's when you're doing things and you're not really considering anything that you make poor decisions and then you regret them. And I've definitely made a lot of decisions before I got into coaching that I wasn't thinking about things in the right way. And one being that I just fell into management. I fell into being a manager of people. I had no plan to be there, but all of a sudden I was responsible for 40 odd people. And, I got through it. It didn't kill me, but, I could have been more prepared. And actually, I could have been consciously thinking about actually, do I really want to be managing people? Or do I want to be more of a specialist in what I do? And that's when I'm doing people helping people with their career decisions, I say, well, there's two career decisions you've got to make. You can either go down the specialist route, so be more knowledgeable, because that's one thing people will or businesses will buy is expertise and knowledge. The other thing they'll buy is responsibility, and especially responsible when you take responsibility for others. So you become a leader or a manager. And essentially, that's the two things you've got to think about. Which one is right for you? And sometimes that is easy for them to decide, oh, I definitely don't want to be into management, which is
Yeah,
most
right.
of the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody wants to manage people.
Mm.
But sadly, people would want to manage people if they know how to do it. And that's a lot of my work is about helping people to understand
Mm.
what it is about, how do you become a good manager?
Yeah.
And essentially that's three things. It's about following a process, having the right mindset, and knowing the skills to use at the right time. So I went a bit off on a tangent there, but if you are if you want to make good decisions, be conscious about the things that are important to you, and values are very much about that. And once you are in line with those things, you are bound to make better decisions.
Yeah. And keeping on that theme, with how can individuals ensure that their pursuit of high performance doesn't come at the cost of their core values or even personal well-being?
It goes back to a lot of things I've already said, really, is understanding what those things are. That's the key. Some people, they couldn't tell you what motivates them or why they do what they do. So Simon Sinek's work around start with why is key here, especially when you talk about business and career. Most people can tell you what they do and how they do it, but a lot of people won't tell you why they do it. They
Mm.
might say, well, it's to pay the bills, it's to pay the mortgage, or all those sort of things, which is more of a need than a need than a want. So what we've got to really tune into, but you could work somewhere else for that same amount. So why are you doing the particular job for this particular organization? And when you are clear about that, then you're much more engaged in what you're doing. So, you know, that's what comes up all the time is understanding yourself is key. And most people don't really have a clear understanding of those motivational drivers and all the things that sort of get them out of bed in the morning. And
Yeah.
when you have that advantage, then you are firstly, you are in a better place. Firstly, your energy levels are higher. But then you also know how to get more for yourself. And if you're in a leadership position, then you know how to get the best out of others as well.
Mhm.
So you become a better leader, and let's go back to leadership is about skills and will. Most people, even if they've been given the skills, if they don't want to do it, then they're never going to be a good leader.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a leader, then you've also got to have the skills to do it. So so often there's one of those is missing, the skills or the will, and that's why I spend most of my time either teaching skills with regards to leadership or making them understand
Yeah.
the will or the values that drive them every day and how important they
It'd
are to
be-
be fulfilled.
yeah, it's interesting being back in my corporate days, which is about 14, 15 years ago now when I went over there. But it's interesting as I stepped up in terms of amount of people that I managed, which was a sort of business turnaround projects, and the more bigger the projects got, and moved up the ladder, if you like, the more people I managed. But there was never a skill. Now I didn't, I don't know if I didn't mind it so much, but I wouldn't say it's one of my values was I'm quite introvert, so I like being around the small people. And it's interesting looking back now, knowing I didn't know that about myself then, but now knowing that I actually, even when I had a team of over 150, I literally managed through probably five people, and that's go from that way. So it was interesting that I put myself in that process, even though I didn't know that I was introverted at the time, but that was the way I did come out. But it's
Yeah.
interesting when a lot of people that are put into them positions, they kind of you're not taught how to, I wasn't taught how to work with, manage 20 people or just put in and then had to learn how to manage 20 people and then 40 people and then, and so on and so on.
Hmm.
I think that a lot of it with people is that, should say, I think understanding your values more than that side can really prepare you a lot better, can't it?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
we'll keep on the sort of corporate theme as well with really would like to take on this round that if you're making the right, you're aligned. So with your actions that you take, you're very aligned with your values and aware of them. Particularly for sort of high performance people like leadership and stuff like that moving into. How do they align that with the values of the company that they're working with? And
That's
yeah, well, you're not. I'll let you answer that rather than lead you down.
well, no, I knew that was coming because it comes up so often, in that it's all very well having your own values, but if you're doing something that you don't really have hold values around, whether that's the organization or what it does or how it does it, and 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 the reason why I smile is that when I'm working with clients that are in that position, so they're in a large organization and they have responsibility for their team. Often I say to them, you don't have control over the organization. All you have control of is around you understanding yourself and also understanding that you have responsibility for the performance of everyone that you're responsible, that reports to you. So you need to know how to get the best out of all those people. And that you have a choice. So one of the things that I do to help them with that is I mentioned earlier about the three things, but the first thing I get them to understand is their underlying beliefs with regards to the way they lead. And so underlying beliefs, we have, um, well, the concept that I teach them is about high challenge, high support. And that's the optimum place you need to be to lead well. So you mentioned that you were an introvert.
Mm.
It doesn't matter whether you're introverted or extroverted, you can be a good leader. You just need to be able to maintain high support and high challenge in your team. And that's where you get high performance. It's if you think about what is the difference between high challenge, high support, and maybe what does high challenge, low support look like? Well, what that looks like in long term is stress because you're expecting a lot with a challenge, but you're not supporting them. And so what's the opposite of that? So what's high support without the challenge? So support without the challenge is while you're there for them and you're not expecting much of them. So they're not reaching their potential. So they're never going to be performing if you're not expecting them to do what you know that they can do. So it's really important to maintain a mindset of high challenge, high support, and that's where you get performance for all your team. If you treat everybody the same, essentially have and treat everyone the same in regards to positive regard and genuineness. Positive regard meaning that you think the best of them. Genuineness is about giving them the the feedback they need when they need it, and make sure those things are maintained and you're consistent across the board. Um, Hopefully that answered your question because I can't remember what it was. But
Yeah, it did. I think that one of the my own personal experience as a bit of a lifesaver was the Seven Habits, Stephen R.
mhm.
Covey, which is here somewhere.
Yeah, yeah,
There.
yeah. It's a classic. Yeah,
But habit
yeah.
five for me about seek first to understand before you understood. That was
Yeah.
a game changer because I went through a through implementing a change process, change management, well, a whole complete change process in a
Mhm.
division, and that was a game changer for me in terms of rather than becoming probably when I look prior to that, it was managing by fear. I
Hmm.
kind of knew what I wanted, I didn't really know about values at that stage, but I knew what I wanted and was going and it was and the results we wanted, and it was my way, the highway essentially, and the managed career.
Yeah,
But that was the game changer in terms of like seek first to understand before you understood,
absolutely. And
and, and allow me, I think, to be interesting with then at that point, probably allowed me to be more me than I ever was
yeah, yeah,
in that sense.
yeah. Well, I mean, those seven habits. I mean, keep sharpening the saw and start
Yeah,
with the end in mind, and all those sort of things. They're still classics for a reason because they are fundamental.
yeah.
And it's a must read for everybody. And yeah, there's great content in that book. I highly recommend
Ironically,
anybody reading it.
yeah, and ironically, we talk about feel about like almost like a checkbox exercise. For me, that was almost that was my mentor gave me that book and said just read this and said then particularly habit five, right? And I was told to get a mentor at the time, and my mentor was told to get a mentee, so it was kind of
Okay.
a false thing. But and he just said I'll read this book, and it was almost like oh that's personal development done, yeah.
Okay.
But then
Right.
kind of realize it's a never ending journey, and
Well, that's that sharpening the saw thing. Always keep
yeah,
sharpening the saw,
yeah,
and make sure you're prepared for the next thing, isn't it? Rather than go hell for leather into something, actually make sure you're prepared and you've got the skills before you start. Sharpen. The story behind that one is it's the guy that spends the time sharpening the saw before he starts chopping down the tree is the one that eventually
yeah,
chops
exactly.
the tree
Yeah.
down quicker than the person that just grabs the first saw he finds and starts sawing away and doesn't realize it's completely blunt, and so it's a good lesson. Yeah.
That's good. So, um, so reading a bit, sort of a bit of research there. So, energy management, particularly for you, is important.
Mhm.
It's come up a lot and just reading various stuff about you, stuff like that. But in you're focusing on your own energy management in your life.
Mhm.
Has it, how has that helped you stay aligned with your values while leading others, and while kind of working with other people and their values.
Mhm.
Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could say I come aligned or enlightened a bit later than when I was leading a team. I didn't have the information I have now, and I would be interested to go back and lead my team again with what I know now. But the way I answer that is now I understand the importance of values is understanding those people that you work with.
Mm,
So back in the day, I run a retail business for 30 years. I worked with my brother and still work with him on in a different way. But I understand him much better now than I used to because I understand what motivates him. And I know that he has different motivations or different values to me. But that doesn't mean that I'm any more special than he is. It's just that he has different values. And so the thing that I was gonna that is what's really important is that sometimes values can clash if you're not aware of them. And
mm,
let's for instance, one of the things I explain to my clients when they're thinking, oh, how does this how does this work? So if you were given a plot of land, and let's say it's already got planning permission on it to build whatever you want on it, if I'm motivated by making a difference, for instance, I would probably look at that piece of land with regards to, well, how can I really make a difference and do something that's actually good for the surrounding areas or the people or something like that.
yeah,
If I was motivated more by money, for instance,
mm,
then I would look at that piece of land with regards to developing it as to get the best return on the money. Yeah.
yeah,
So straight away, if you've got two people looking at that piece of land and they're thinking in those two ways,
yeah,
they're not going to communicate very well, are they? They're not going to talk in the same language even. They're going to be completely talking. They'll be completely unaligned. Let's put it that way. So what you've got to do is, if you're going into partnership with anybody or you're working with anybody, get to know them, get to know what motivates them, what's their
yeah.
values. Because also, if you don't, then you'll come a time when you will have some sort of clash and you won't understand why. And,
That's very common, isn't it? With
it is.
values are very common. Yeah,
It's very common, exactly. So, make sure that whoever you're working with, make sure you understand them and they understand you. And it's one of the things that I meet a lot of people that are in partnership, and I say to them, do you really understand what makes your partner tick? Oh yeah, yeah, because we're pretty aligned. But I had a one-to-one with somebody the other day, and I said, oh, how's it going? Oh, yeah. She said, oh, it's going all pretty all right. But we did have to sort of change this way the business was set up recently. And I said, oh, tell me about that. She said, well, the thing is, I really work hard and I was getting lots of clients. And of course, my partner, she wasn't in the same ilk as me. So she just sort of ticked along. And so when I looked at it, I started to realize that I was generating 70% of the income and my partner was only doing about 30. So I said to her one day that we need to change this because I'm not getting rewarded in the way that I want to get rewarded because everything I do is you're getting rewarded from my hard work. I'm not, and it was starting to cause her a bit of a problem.
yeah,
And so that they eventually came to a conclusion that okay, we'll treat each other's clients as their own, and then they'll get the income from their clients, and so that sort of made sure that didn't become an issue. But I know there's a clear difference with regards to their values, and what would have probably been useful a few years ago when they started the business was to actually understand where they potentially could start to have those problems if they don't understand them. And their values would have obviously they wouldn't have changed dramatically. There is a thing about values changing and motivations changing, but that all depends on in the environment and also aspirations changing. And so that could well have changed in the time that we've been working together. But
like what
I
we've done
would,
in we're in the title about is your actions will change, wouldn't it? From
yeah,
my conversation with you here is that
exactly.
if you know that your actions will change, and
Yeah.
so their both of their actions would have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
then
you don't want those actions to clash. So that's that, if you need to be aligned with whoever you're working with, whether it's a
yeah,
business partner or somebody in your team, and if you're working in a team, it's about people that work have to rely on one another. So we're not talking about a collective of maybe salespeople that just do the same job. If a team is a actually where people are relying on other people, if you talk about it in football terms, you can't have everybody being centre forward. Somebody's got to be in goal and somebody's got to play, and so everyone's got to play their part. And so it's appreciating that. and making sure it doesn't become a problem where everybody's trying to do the same job. And also realizing that you've got to appreciate everybody's contribution because it's all valuable. It doesn't, you know, most people know that the people that score the goals or the goalkeeper maybe when they save a penalty are the ones that get the adulation.
Yeah.
It's the people in between that don't get quite so much notice because they don't score the goals and they don't save the goals. That their contribution needs to be appreciated in a different way.
Mm. That's really interesting because I've kind of noticed with the Liverpool manager Arne Slot, I'm a Liverpool fan, so the things,
Mhm.
but interesting how much he talks about the substitutes coming on and the part they played, even if they come on for 5 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever. So it's quite interesting saying that and then sort of thinking of that when it's there that he's almost letting him know publicly that he appreciates the team, the bits that the parts that they're playing.
Well, it's a if
Value.
we're talking about values here, but one thing to remember is as human beings, we all want to be valued.
Mm.
And so, whatever part we play, we want to be noticed and appreciated for the value that we bring. And so, whichever way you look at values, it's really important to us to appreciate the things that are important to us, but also for other people to appreciate the things that we bring to the party or to the team.
Mm. Just want to expand something you said earlier, and I was going to come back round to it at some point when my notes, but take about 40 minutes to get back to it. But the talked about the time element. We haven't got much. We haven't got can't create any more time. We can manage it better. But
Mhm,
the how can someone shift their focus from managing time to managing energy,
mhm,
and then how that helps them, or it helps the aligning your values, your actions with your values,
mhm.
how that supports that, or
So when you're doing things that you value, that
Mm.
tends to give you energy. So you because of that you perform better just because of it. And so you're maintaining it. And so we want to break it down into different types of energy. So we can do that. So let's talk about physical energy. So physical energy is dependent on probably looking after of being active and also around the way you treat food and your nutrition. Those are key things with regards to maintaining and improving your physical energy.
yeah, like you
So
said,
if we then go to emotional energy, which is another energy, what a lot of people do is they use food to feed their emotional energy. And
Mm.
that's where sometimes things go a bit pear-shaped in that they're emotionally eating.
Yeah.
So a lot of this things is regards to being intentional or conscious about the actions that you're taking and why you're doing them. So if you have no value about the quality of food that you eat, then you tend to eat whatever's available. You don't think about the content, its nutritional content, or its micro content. So macros being the fat, protein, and carbohydrates, or then going down to macro or micro, I should say. It's about the nutrients that are involved. So if you're really taking conscious action around the type of food you want to eat, you will make sure those things are, the things you're eating are the things that you know are good for you. So if your values aren't around good food, then you will just eat anything, and hopefully it will give you energy. And without going too much into the reasons why we do things and also the type of food, we just got to be mindful around the things that we eat because it has a knock-on effect with regards to our energy. So maintaining energy and knowing where you get energy from is being really conscious about the decisions you make, and those decisions you make are very much a lot in should be in line with your values. So it's like tapping into them. And um, on a different note completely, when you see people that are really passionate about something, it tends to be that something has happened to them that they want to put right. Do you know when you see people that, some injustice has happened to them or someone in their family or something? That's when they're really, really focused and motivated. And it's because they have a real strong value around what they're
Yeah,
doing. And it's almost like they have this, like, they're almost possessed, aren't they? They're going
yeah,
to do it with no one's going to stop them. And they do it time and time without any sort of hesitation. They're just doing it. So, someone like, Alan Bates, for instance, the guy that has eventually got his message through about the post office and what they were doing to the postmasters and mistresses. That's the sort of guy he had a clear value around what he was going to,
yeah,
what was important to him, and he kept on. And we're talking about not for months, we're talking about years or decades,
yeah.
where he literally just kept on and on and on till
Mm.
one day someone decided to do a documentary,
Yeah,
dramatization of the situation, and all of a sudden,
yeah, open up on
everybody
everything.
suddenly realized, seriously, this has been going on
Yeah,
down everybody's street. There's all this going on, and that's why all these people that have been, stripped of their businesses and put in jail because of a computer system. So these values and motivations really drive actions, and when you have them, in some instances, nothing will stop you until you get to the action or the outcome that you want.
mm. That's why it's super powerful. Like the title of this was Aligning Values of Action because the two are so important together rather than you could talk about the two separately,
Mhm.
but powerful and yeah, I love that. And also with your values evolve, how do values over a value how do values evolve over time? Um, and as they evolve, because I make different things, particularly as you go through age and things like having kids and different works and stuff like that.
Mm.
So they evolve over time, but how can someone ensure that they continue to act in alignment as their values shift?
Well, I would suggest getting some way of checking in with what it is that's driving you,
Mm,
and that's why I use the diagnostic I use. But on that note, there's three things that are constantly changing, and that's why values and motivations change over time. So,
mm,
firstly, um, there is an element of our past, the things that we've experienced. So
mhm,
up until this point, we all have a past and we've experienced things. So that's one element.
mm.
The second element is the present time and our environment around us and the actual conditions of what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And not surprisingly, the third element is the future and what our aspirations are for the future. So those things are always moving, and they can change. They can change very dramatically if you have something dramatic happen to you. But in most cases, they gently just change over time, and then all of a sudden, like something becomes like uncomfortable.
Mm,
So this often comes when people have been in a career for a long time, and they suddenly start to feel uncomfortable about it, and they don't. I'm doing the same old job. Why do I start feeling like this? Well, there's something about the role that they're just not connected to anymore, and their values around it is a problem. And so that's when they start to think, well, maybe I need to do something different or do it in a different way or those sort of things. And, a lot of people jump ship. You talked about,
yeah.
being part of a corporate setup. A lot of people say, well, I need more freedom and security and it's so important now. I'm going to do something that's good for me. I'll turn my back on that security of the large organization and I'll do something that's actually gives me freedom. It probably won't pay me as well, or it might not be give me much security, but actually, what's important at the moment is to do something that's fulfilling and gives me the ability to do things in my own way and when I want to do them.
And does that you find when people come to you, it's more um when they've realized their values are important and the actions they're taking that has quite an impact on what like their role is at the time, what they're working. Because do they kind of almost look at everything and go, right, oh, hang on, or is it that way around where something calls you, like you said about someone feels uncomfortable and they think, and then the values come out, is it?
Well, and it goes back again to being
Yeah.
conscious about what is driving the feeling and the behavior, and go back to the example I gave you with the person that was thinking about getting a job, jacking their business in, and actually that would have been the wrong thing to do. So one of the things that I suggest is that rather than take action just because it sort of feels like it might be the right thing, actually do something more consciously as to and find out more about yourself. And there's lots of things you can do these days. Definitely find out about your personality style, your behavioral style, and how that works, and just think about how that fits in with what you do. Motivation's key. I use a diagnostic for that. Character strengths. There's lots of ways out there you can find out. Character strengths are, well, they're all strengths. And so there'll be character strengths that you use pretty much every day without thinking, but there'll be some others that you probably never use or very rarely use. And, what would happen if you suddenly start using one of those strengths instead of the ones you always lean on? And, by doing that, you might just see things completely differently, or, just
Yeah.
to make that little bit of a tweak. Sometimes little things can make a big difference, I've learned. And that's definitely what I've learned over time, is that it's not about making drastic changes in most cases. It's actually just subtly just changing a few bits and pieces, and that can make all the difference.
Yeah. And being open to feedback, is that a big part of it as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that's all the things I just described. It's about, yeah, doing the diagnostic or the test and then taking on board what it's telling you.
Yeah.
And it will highlight things that might feel a bit uncomfortable. I remember a friend of mine did one of these personality types, and it came back and it described her in a particular way. I can't remember what she said. She said, I was outraged. She said, "Do you know how it's described me?" And I can't remember the way she has described it, but her husband was sat next to her, and he just said, and he just sort of nodded. And
Yeah.
she said, "Well, there you go. That's what I'm up against." And I said, "Well, that's probably accurate then, isn't it?"
Yeah.
If your husband's acknowledging that actually that's probably true, then if it feels uncomfortable,
Yeah.
then you have a choice.
Mm.
If the choice is carry on doing what you're doing in the way you do it, or actually, I don't want people to perceive me like that. I want to change something. Maybe I should be a little bit more chilled out, maybe not quite so direct. Just subtly change the way you approach things. And sometimes it's just a matter of doing things with a smile on your face sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that enough, then people take you off. Well, he's always a bit miserable. So just consciously smiling and actually not taking yourself too seriously, and actually realizing this isn't whatever we're dealing with isn't the end of the world. Just the way you approach things can make a big difference to the way people treat you and
Yeah.
connect with you.
I think there's a big element. I think I absolutely agree. Great point. And I think there's a big element of if you're being your true self. I mean, there's people where I've come across and they're and other people have sort of made comments about them and all that, but it's kind of they're being their true self, so it's fine. It's kind of like actually, it's not the sort of person I would go, have a drink with or go. Well, I don't drink anyway, really, but have a drink with or go, probably a burger band would probably be my thing for the drink. But I respect them and to honor it because I think they're being themselves. That is who they
Yeah.
are, and I think that's then you start attracting the people around you, don't you? As
Yeah,
the
being true to yourself and being authentic is important. I think
Yeah,
people connect with that. You
yeah,
know, they give you a little bit more space when they realize that you'll just have a personal drive to do things. As long as you're not causing them any particular problem, then they just accept you for who you are in that way. And I think that's a healthy way to see people, as they're just being who they are, and they're not trying to wind you up. And that goes back to understanding personality styles and all that sort of
yeah,
stuff. If you understand that and you know that there's people that are unlike you and different to you, you just embrace it.
yeah,
And teams need it. You need a blend of different people, because otherwise, we get a bit narrow focused on certain things, and teams need to be very much looking outwards and not inwards.
Yeah. And even things like communication style are completely different, aren't they? Some people, some people like to, what can
Yeah.
be said in 3 words in an email, they write a whole things. And
Emails are great for that. I mean,
when they
you
get one
can.
reply, 1 word reply, it's like, oh, but actually,
I had a client like that once, and,
yeah,
and I was copied in, and some. There was two directors in this business, and I was sort of coaching both of them. And I sometimes I get copied in by one and the other, and it was just comical that one was very much detail orientated, and his long emails covering every single scenario, which were like pages and pages, and then he'd get a one liner back from the other person and vice versa. And then in the one-to-one sessions, one was saying, well, I never get much back from him, and the other person saying, well,
get too
I
much.
almost get all this so much information I can't cope with it. You think, well, look, guys, understand you're different, and the thing is, the operation relies on you being the way you are. So you don't need to change. You just need to embrace it,
Yeah,
and embrace your differences. Is one of the things I talk about in my book.
yeah. Have you got your book there? You can just put up on the screen when
Yeah,
we'll give it a play. There you go. You'll be able. That's it. Brilliant. It was,
yeah,
what?
available from Amazon.
I was gonna say all good bookshops and some bad ones as well.
Plenty of those. Yeah.
How can that was just I didn't want to I wanted to cover particularly in this, so just got you, but how can someone how can someone handle moments when they realize they've acted against their own values?
Well, they would know it, won't they? They'd feel it. It would like get you in the gut, wouldn't it?
Mm.
Especially when you act against your values. And also, if someone is acting in a way that is against your values, it really gets you back up, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And so, with that regard, you need to be aware and conscious and engage your neocortex front brain stuff where you don't let the emotion to take over. And
mm,
so being conscious about that and that's awareness piece
mm,
with values can trigger you if your values aren't being met or if someone is acting a particular way that is against your values, then it could uh, lead into other things if you're not aware of it. So you need to be aware so that you don't be driven by your emotions.
mm.
So one of those things that get we talk about a lot, particularly when with clients when they're leading a team and certain people are causing them difficulties, and we got to get to, well, what is it particularly? What is it about? Is it what they're doing, or is it the way they're doing it? And not letting that sort of cloud the issue essentially, so
Yeah.
that you can keep in the moment, and so you
Because
don't
people
let
can
emotions.
react to something like that, where they might react and then have this, really uncomfortableness because it's not they've reacted that's not aligned with what their values are.
If they've done something, it would just you'd feel it. So you need to think about, well, what what has happened there that is against something that is almost like a principle to me, and what do I need to do about it? Do I need to have a conversation with the person, or what is that's making me feel like this? And so that's why a value is so important. Why being aligned to your values isn't so important, because when they're not being met, or there is things that about what you do or the organization, if they do things that are against the values that you hold dear, then it's going to be feel really uncomfortable, isn't it? In many
Yeah.
ways. So being aware and making sure that you know why you're feeling like that,
Mm.
and not making um, quick emotional decisions,
That's a
I would
great
suggest.
process because I think because then you're less likely to do it happen again or happen more common because you've gone through that process. It's a great process, isn't it?
That's yeah. I mean, self-awareness is key with all this.
Yeah.
You've just got to understand yourself. That's why that putting up the mirror is the first step in my process. So if you don't understand yourself, then you're at a disadvantage and you can't really perform at your best and particularly lead others.
Mm. Awesome. Well, this has been fascinating, Mark. I really appreciate everything you've given. So much love. It's been wonderful. Got through our internet problems and got it recorded, which is great. Yeah, fantastic. We're going to put the connect to people connect with you down below details.
Mhm.
But I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing so much valuable stuff that you have and how important this is. I think it's a really trigger people really associate with this with their values and their actions and what we talked about. So I really appreciate you sharing everything that you have done. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Cheers, Mark.
Cheers.